Good afternoon. This is Celia Lacayo with LA Social Science, continuing our book series today. And we have a really great treat today as we have Nancy Marie Mikeflow with us today. And she has several publications out that are very critical to our time, beginning with Knowing Native Arts, as well as Making History, the IAIA Museum of the Contemporary Native Arts, where she's an editor and contributor. She is also the editor and contributor for a special issue of the UCLA American Indian Culture and Research Journal. Dr. Miflo is in the Gender Studies Department and has an affiliation with the American Indian Studies Interdepartmental Program. And we have with us today a different type of format where we have an added person, a graduate student who's going to actually interview her. And this is going to be a great treat for us. So this is Marina Perez, and she's a graduate student at UCLA, her second year in a master's program in the American Indian Studies. So hello to you both. And I'm going to let you all take it away, and I will catch the rest of you at the end.
Thank you, Celia, for the introduction. I'm really excited to be in conversation with you today, Dr. Mikeflow. I was wondering if we can start off talking a little bit about contemporary Indigenous arts. And really, can you share a little bit on why art is so powerful for Native peoples and Native communities?
Yeah, sure. Thanks everyone for welcoming me today. I'm very excited to be here and to be part of a larger conversation. For myself, I've spent 30 years in the field of contemporary American Indian art, and I think a lot of times the field gets conflated with just tourism or something you buy on the side of the road when you're traveling across the country. And my task is really to bring a theorization to contemporary Native arts. Native arts for us, a lot of people will say it's a communication tool. I think when we say communication, we think about something very simple like, hello, how are you? Really what this scholarship is doing, the team of scholars that I'm working with, is trying to ground our larger philosophical ideas into what the visual cultural arts scene is exactly. And so that means thinking about how do we transfer knowledge. Knowing Native Arts book has a chapter called The Manner in Which Knowledge Grows, and I'm quoting from a theorist and scholar, Nancy Parizo, an anthropologist. I was trained in cultural anthropology as well, who says, this is a mechanism by which different cultures meet and they exchange knowledge. And so I'm really kind of situating the fine arts field more in this, not just consumption of Native arts, but how Native arts are produced and how they actually move through space and time between human communities.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Mikeflow. I was also wondering if you could talk a little bit about American Indian curatorial methodologies. Can you expand a little bit on that term and what that looks like when investing in arts projects?
So American Indian curatorial practice is an approach that I use when I teach about American Indian arts, and I talk about its importance in terms of community and the values of Indigenous communities. That approach to the arts is known by these qualities being long-term, mutually meaningful, reciprocal, and with mentorship. And so when you see curation, when you see shows that travel, often those shows have been authored by a lone curator, someone who has a specialty in a certain geographic range or say in a certain time period, a certain medium, and they independently have chosen that that's their area of expertise. And so they go about finding objects and collections, choosing one at a time, putting them together, or choosing native artists. Sometimes I say it's like choosing the shiny objects or choosing fruit at the grocery store. I'll take one banana, one apple, one orange. And instead of looking at this holistic system that exists. So native artists have been trained just like any other artist in certain schools, in certain families. They're influenced by their histories, they're influenced by their communities, by their language, by their land, by political issues like extraction of resources. And so I think working from that contextual approach to contemporary Indian art, for me, makes the most sense in terms of mirroring community values. Oftentimes you think of exhibits or marketplaces or sales or even just attention to one work of art. And there fails to be this kind of holistic understanding of the culture that actually produced that moment in time, or produced that type of medium. And so really American Indian curatorial practice is trying to get back at an individualized approach to the arts. It's a reclaiming of our histories. It's a forwarding of our political standing. And it's a way that we can kind of redeem the knowledge and the value and the power of our communities. The long-term part, I just can't emphasize that enough. Anthropology has been criticized as being a colonial tool in the past. I'm trained as a cultural anthropologist, and I know that critique. But one of the things that you can approach this field with is to say, I'm not going to just kind of bounce around and choose one artist or just choose one community and do several hundred of those at once within one show or within one book. It's an approach that says I'm making a commitment to a community for the rest of my scholarly career, and I'm going to stay with that community. That in terms of being an ethnography or being a lifelong pursuit is something that I think is really important for our communities, because all too often our resources are extracted, and this is a reclaiming of those resources.
Amazing. Thank you, Dr. Michael. I definitely see this long-term planning as really like a radical indigenous strategy. And some of the cultural values that you were discussing, one of them that really kind of sticks out for me, you had a really beautiful conversation with Dr. David Warren. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what does it look like to really work with and talk with our elders?
Oh, thank you so much, Marina. Yeah, Dave Warren, oh my goodness, my hero. He's a Santa Clara historian. He received a doctorate in history from the University of New Mexico, which is the press that published Making History, IA Museum of Contemporary Native Arts. Before I was even born, and I'm pushing into 60 now. So, I mean, it's just phenomenal that he was such a pioneer and continues to be a pioneer. He helped with the National Museum of the American Indian. He held several leadership positions with the Institute of American Indian Arts. And, I think that in our communities, we really hold our elders very high, and we all try to be humble. And so there's a humble way of including elders, which is, you reach out and say, hey, can I come by? You bring a small gift, you share some food, you have a long conversation. And with Dr. Dave, we like to call him Dr. Dave. With Dr. Dave, when you do that periodically, you're kind of, it's almost like you're touching back a place in your history and you're meeting there together. And there's something to me that is embodied and alive and life affirming about that process that I really crave and need, especially as a scholar from an underrepresented community, working in a field that hasn't really been given the legitimacy of some other fields. Native arts, we honestly, we don't have an academic journal. We don't have the endowed professorships. There are very few places where you can get a PhD in our field. So this mentorship and this sort of deep knowledge, these deep rivers that run, I think are just really sustaining for us. And so, yes, I was very happy that Dave Warren agreed to have another conversation with me and that we could reproduce that conversation for the rest of the readers to learn about and to know. And I guess I would just say that we need to do more of this. I would love to see an elder in residence program at UCLA. I think that's totally feasible. I would love it if we could continue to hold our elders up. So the American Indian Culture and Research Journal volume, the special issue on fraud that's coming out this fall, we've dedicated that in honor of Suzanne Schoen Harjo, who is one of our national leaders and one of our national treasures, both in issues of fraud, but also in just building a culture of sustainability for us politically and culturally. So yeah, I think constantly forwarding the place of elders in our community and thinking about the life stages that we each go through is just really key and central to our field.
Well, Dr. Michael, one thing I love about Making History is really how beautiful the book is. It's filled with just beautiful images. And one thing that I noticed that you did, and I was wondering if you could kind of talk us and kind of show us what this method would look like of being able to analyze artwork.
Yeah, I was really honored to work with the Institute of American Indian Arts. It's the only tribal college in the country that is devoted solely to the arts. So I encourage everyone listening to just look online for it. I also want to honor the 200 plus artists whose works were included in this book. Many of these works have never been reproduced or shown before, so that's really exciting. The last part is that we hope this will be a manual for people to learn how to teach American Indian art from a community perspective. So one example of this is I'm using two works of a member of my tribe. His name is Alan Hauser. Alan was the first child born free from the time in which we were held as political prisoners and definitely detained, which was from 1886 to 1913. He went on to win awards from presidents, to be a very revered elder, and his whole career just really brought home the power of presenting an image of dignity of our people, rather than things like mascots or demeaning images. And he made these just amazing depictions. And so the chapter that I contributed to this volume is actually on the human nude in American Indian art. I think often people think of Native people as being very conservative, and we are, it's true. And I thought it was so empowering that Alan used the female nude in his work. And I wanted to tease out what is the way that he went about that could be called an indigenous methodology. And what I saw in the piece that I've shared in the book, there's two. One is By the Water's Edge, it's from 1987. And then another piece called Dawn from 1989. By the Water's Edge is a piece that we would say is a representative piece, meaning it looks like what a photograph would look like. It's rendered in a human form. And it's of a nude woman who's relaxing. And what I love about this is that, especially given the really horrendous rates of sexual violence against Native women in our country, this is a nude woman who is totally self-possessed. And you as a viewer are not worried about her safety. You know, she is leaning, touching herself with her own hand. It's rendered in bronze, this material that's very weighty. The whole approach to this is one where she feels in control of her body and her surroundings, to me. And I know that Alan was a revered elder when he did this work, and so there's not that kind of concern for what are the circumstances of how this was made. And I just love his freedom, you know, that he as an artist could do whatever he wanted to do. You know, he chose that path, not the market path, not the critic path, not looking at the audience and what their expectations were, but what truly inspired him. And so even in his own work, I think the next piece, which is the Dawn piece, it's an abstraction of a very similar female figure that's in repose. And in this one, you can see there are minimal lines, it's hollowed out, there are no kind of indications of specificity of form. You don't see hands or face or feet or anything. And he felt free to use that as well. You know, I think part of the beauty of American Indian art is it's Native folks who are claiming anything we want to claim. We're not really just restricted to what people think of as being traditional craft, and people still use that word. It's an incorrect word. It's really Native people using whatever resources are at hand for them. A lot of things were imported that we think are authentic Indian art, everything from beadwork to horses. So in the description, comparing these two between realistic and between an abstract work, it's really fun and compelling for me to try to tease out some of the details. A lot of people would say Alan went in a progressive manner from realistic to abstraction. And I don't think that lineal trajectory even counts here. That suggests that modernism is something that Native people aspire to, that's out of their reach, and once they get there, they've assimilated. And of course, that couldn't be further from the truth. Native people are using whatever resources are at hand. We're naturally very resourceful, and this is another example of our resourcefulness. And I'll just end by, there's a quote that I have of Alan's that I just really love. This is about his career. He's quoted as saying, "What I'm trying to do is to make the Indian image look more contemporary and beautiful." And so I say, to me, this assertion speaks of how Native peoples were imagined in his own lifetime, a span that knew intimately of colonial injustices, including the forced imprisonment of his parents and his tribe for 28 years. So, here's this trajectory over time from the early 1900s to the end of that century. And you see this individual who is working as a community member, making these memorable statements, and I think demonstrating with his whole life choices what's possible, what the human spirit is capable of. And I thank you for asking, Marina, about this piece, because I love Alan's career, and I think he continues to educate, even though he's not walking amongst us now.
Thank you for sharing that strategy. I definitely think it's useful for all grad students and also for K-12 students. So I was wondering, do you have any advice for any artists, students, researchers during the pandemic?
Yeah, I think the pandemic, of course, is a global emergency. It's also a global awakening. And I think that all of us have learned different things from this point in time that we're going to carry forth into our communities. And these are things that could actually strengthen our practices. And so for artists, for those of you who want to be artists, for those of you who want to be curators, I often have students that are waiting for an opportunity that will present itself. So either it's a faculty member saying, "I want you to work on this project," or it may be, you're answering a job call. You are waiting for a residency. You are, waiting for the moment at which someone's going to find you and ask you to have a show somewhere. And even before the pandemic, this isn't really a functional approach to the arts. And what I suggest is that if you're a producing artist, just continue to respond to the world around you. Embrace every raw emotion that you have. Partner with your friends and your family and your communities. Just keep active, keep moving. We all stand on the shoulders of our ancestors, and they saw a whole lot in their lives. If you think generationally from my family, my grandfather was born a prisoner of war in this country for no crime except he happened to be born a Chiricahua Apache boy. And I was always taught that it's such an honor just to be a part of humanity, that we owe so much to our ancestors who suffered so much, that, let every moment count and really push as far as you can. And I think the other part along the lines of not being reactive is just make it yourself. Again, even before the pandemic, if someone wanted to be a curator, I would say, well, don't you have friends who are artists? Why don't you get their work, put it up on your wall, in your garage, at your home, at a happening, film it, host it, and all of our most phenomenal artists are doing this. They're doing their own blogs, they're having their own conversations, they're hosting things on YouTube, they're doing just the creative practice. And so I think as Native folks, we've seen a lot in the past, and we know how to move forward in the future, and we're going to be here no matter what, because this is our land and this is our territory and these are our resources. And so artists, curators, creative types, claim that, own it, just keep going forward with a lot of love in your heart for your community.
Thank you, Dr. Maithlo. I appreciated this conversation, and it's so amazing to learn from you, and I'm looking forward to what the future holds for us all.
Thank you, Marina. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Saya, for inviting us.
So again, this is wrapping up another segment of our book series. And we hope that you make sure that you purchase this book or actually purchase it for have it on your syllabus for your students. And remember to subscribe to LA Social Science. Thank you again, Dr. Maithlo and Marina.